G'day, Flosstube. Anna, aka Moranalis, back with another stitching update. Welcome to anybody who's new. If you're not a regular Flosstube viewer, you will see cross stitch here. Welcome to anybody who's returning. This week I have whips, I have some randomness, just other projects I worked on over the years. I've been cleaning the shed. So I stumbled upon boxes of stuff and I thought, well, I'll just take the opportunity to show you. So I'll put that segment at the end. I have a couple of new starts. And I forget. This is actually the second time I filmed this because the first time I filmed this, my phone apparently doesn't like really long videos. And so when you get to a certain size video, which of course I have no idea how long that was in minutes, it just refuses to save it to the card, and so now I get to say it all again. Here I was feeling super productive and haven't accomplished anything. Anyway, let's do the whips. So because it's early in the new year, I thought I'll take the opportunity, and I've been cleaning out the shed, finding things. I'll take the opportunity to go through do a whip parade. All the whips I have, including what I can find out of the deep stash from years ago. And I had sort of thought to put that into, the regular whip update and then the whole whip parade. But the reality is this week I've actually touched a fair number of things, so I feel like I just spend my time repeating myself, which of course I am anyway, because I have to film this twice. But, not that anybody's salty about this. So, in no particular, well, we're going to start with the whips I've worked on. Then we're going to do the whips that are not, they're from this latest period of stitching, i.e. they're less than 5 years old. And then we will do the whips that are from 15 years ago or other sources. So, starting with what I've worked on today, or this week, 2 weeks. Brain. Words are really hard, guys. So, I think it's Semi-Sane does the Choose My Whip. And I put up a couple of choices. I don't do a lot of the challenges, but I quite like the Choose My Whip. And the idea is whatever Choose My Whip. Whatever people put the most likes against, you stitch on that for the week. The map actually won for a change. So, I have been working all week long on the map. And I had done those 4 pages, that page, and I had just shy of half of that page done last time. So we're working on filling out that page. Despite having 5 nights of working on this, haven't actually made a super amount of progress. Sorry, it's a bit hard to see around the threads. I know I had finished. I had come all the way, made the edge of the page. That now goes down there, I think. It's a bit hard to see around all the hanging threads. So I think it basically amounts to 2 extra columns. Probably each night I only get about 2, maybe 300 on a good night stitches in. That's despite working for at least 2 hours a night on it, and a little bit in the morning maybe before I go to work. It's just been a really sort of confetti heavy section, so the progress isn't super fast. But yeah, I'm looking forward to, by the time we get down to this corner, we should have the first bit of like proper globe map coming in. So that'll be good to see that bit. I think it's pretty much just all white, but from the folds, but all good. It'll be map. So yeah, that is World Map by ZAnnaCrossStitch. This is done on a 25 count even weave, 2/1 half cross. So this is the only thing I've got that is half cross. Just because of the sheer size, I wanted to have the amount of stitches. The other things I worked on, actually, this I believe is one of the new starts. This is, hold on, gotta find the picture. I was organized the first time around and had things open in the right pages. And my phone didn't save that. I had it all put away before I realized my phone didn't save it and I had to take it all out again. No, not salty. So my daughter has been charting something for me. So this is a Fizzy original. It's based on a song. I will put the link in the below. Usual disclaimer, I'm just going to write it out and paste it with the link every time. Don't Google him if you don't like bad language and poking fun at religion. But I really quite like this song. So the idea behind this pattern is when the kids leave home, like move out, I will give them this reminder that, you know, come Christmas, they'll always know where to find us, drinking white wine in the sun, waiting for them. So this is obviously a bit of a work in progress. We got the wine bottle and the wine, some shells need backstitching yet. I will probably add little bits of half cross to indicate water and sand in various places. I probably just do that on the fly. Maya has charted the island all as one solid color DMC. I will probably swap that out for a variegated. I think it would be nice to get some variation in there, but I don't really want to chart it. And I think it's the sort of thing that lends itself nicely to a variegated floss. So I have to figure out which one, but that's the idea. That's what we're aiming for. And, you know, it's one of those things, I stitch a bit and then she reworks bits, and obviously, like, the shells need to be finished, but I think she was getting a bit exhausted with the charting process, so I wanted to be able to show her that, yes, it's turning out, to give her some more enthusiasm. She should go back and work on the shells and all that. So that's what it looks like so far. Obviously, wine bottle and glass of wine. And for somebody who has done 0 cross-stitch charting, like, this kid can draw. There's no doubt she can draw. But she's never tried to chart a cross-stitch thing, and I think that's freaking turned out pretty stinking cool. I'm really pleased with that. So we are making a very deliberate effort. You know, when she converted it, it's literally like she drew it, her drawing, on graph paper and stitch by stitch, charted it into a digital equivalent. So we are making changes as we go, simplifying the color palette and stuff to be a bit more reasonable. I think at the moment it's only like a 6x6 design, and she's got 50 colors in there. So we've already culled about 7, and I suspect more will go before we're done. But, I mean, how cool is that? I think that's awesome. And it captures, you know, perfectly what I'm trying to do. And it has our very own island in the background, and yeah. So, it's all good. So that was one of my new starts. And then the other new start I had, I think that was a new start. Was that a new start? I lose track, guys. The other thing I started was a Sea to Stitch. So this book I bought totally spontaneous sort of purchase, flashed up on Facebook, and I thought, oh, must have that. I've been looking for an excuse to do embroidery. This just spoke to me. So we're going to stitch the word. It's got all the letters of the alphabet, several color schemes. We're going to stitch the word beach, and it fits perfectly in a frame I have floating around here unused, so it'll make a good display, and I'll do it so that they're individual, and if I want to make the word different, I can. So the book is called A Sea to Stitch, and I got this one from A Stitch in Time in Tassie, I think. So this is entirely a learning exercise for me. So if anybody has feedback, suggestions, please pipe up and let me know, because I am making zero claims to be an expert in this domain. This is the first time I've done any kind of embroidery, so we are learning. First up, the fabric is a cheap 100% cotton. Was white. I dyed it gray with a little bit of modeling, just so that it wasn't stark white for the purposes of stitching. The pattern, you know, when you Google it, you get umpteen options for how to put the pattern on the fabric. I opted for, this is a water-soluble, I don't know, they call it interfacing. It's a water-soluble sort of plasticky sort of thing. It's very clear, so it is a piece of cake to trace over. I was more concerned about, because it's that plasticky finish, whether the pen would A, draw, and then B, not smear, but I did find one that seems to work fairly good. So that's all good. And just trace that on, and then initially I pinned it, and then I went through and did long stitches around the design just to hold it in place. And of course, now that I've started adding the actual stitching in there, it's held down quite well. At this point, I suspect I could take the safety pins out and trim that down, a lot of that surplus. I just haven't been bothered. And it serves to, you can kind of see, you know, how transparent that is. It literally, that's why I picked it. It's a piece of cake to trace through that. So long as your pen's good, it's easy peasy. So, as for this week, we've done a heap of stem stitches in about 6 different colors to make those waves. So I'm pretty pleased with my results. Unlike cross stitch, it's a bit more guesswork. You know, so you want to end up with a gradient, but they don't tell you, you know, necessarily 2 rows of stem stitch, and, you know, you just kind of, oh, that looks about right. So for somebody who's used to the very strict, you have a pattern. If the pattern says make an X, you make an X. If it says make a back stitch, you make a back stitch. Embroidery is a bit more fluid. And then you get, yeah, so where your waves merge and stuff, it's a bit more, you know, do you want that wave to be in front and come around, or, you know, you kind of got to decide how to lay it out a bit more. Anyway, but I'm pretty pleased with how it's turned out. You know, Google's your friend. You get 90% of it out of the book, and then Google fills in any gaps, and it's actually been pretty straightforward. I think next time I pick this up, the next step in the process is to do the sand. At this point, because I know zilch, we are just literally, if the book says we do it the way the book says. You know, down the road when I know a bit more what I'm doing, I'll think about making adjustments as I see fit. For now, we're just following instructions. So obviously that's the A in beach, because A and B are both in the word, and they're both right up in front of the alphabet. And my interfacing conveniently fit 2 letters worth on, you know, 1 cut off piece. I traced both the A and the B. I actually think that was probably a mistake, because now B is floating around just in the pages of my book, and this stuff on its own is really quite flimsy. I'm a bit afraid it's going to wind up getting damaged before I finish this and get ready to go to B, but if I have to, I'll retrace it. But I think in future I'll just do them 1 at a time that I'm ready to start. My gray fabric was not big enough to put on the Q-snap, so we just have lovely scraps of fabric added around the edge so that I've got enough for the Q-snap to put in. The gray itself is about as big as the Q-snap is exactly, so then the black just goes around. Gives it better grip. So I'm really pleased with how that is coming out, and yeah, looking forward to getting it out again, and you know, seeing what the next step in the process is. It's all a learning exercise. All right, so I think last time I filmed, I was just a bit shy of meeting my yearly goal on the Tinctorium Mandala by Chatelaine. So I went ahead and I finished that, and it probably only took me the rest of that day that I filmed. There wasn't much time put into this, but I did finish up all those water basins. They're all outlined. They are got all their back stitch. Somewhere along the line I found like an entire petal worth of specialty stitches that hadn't been done, and I'm like, how can I look at this for so long thinking everything's done and totally miss the fact that there's like an entire petal's worth of specialty stitches missing? I don't comprehend how that works. All this bright blue back stitching went in. It looks better now that it's all in with the basins. The first one or so that I put in, it looked overwhelming on the rest of the stitching, but yeah, I think I've decided I'm okay with it now, but it looked really, compared to what had been there previously, it looked really garish for a little bit there. So yeah, that is all of part one, with the exception of the beads, obviously done for the Tinctorium Mandala. This video, I expect, as evidenced by the fact that my phone is spitting the dummy, is going to be quite long, so I will not do an up-close detail this time. I will do it next time I pull out the this project, which hopefully is not too long. We start in the arches and various other things that go around it next, so that'll be pretty cool to see. So yeah, that's Tinctorium Mandala by Chatelaine Designs. Fabric is a 28 count cashel. I think I forgot to say the fabric for Maya's wine bottle. That's probably an offcut of the 28 count cashel, but undyed. If I forget to say it, all the Chatelaines I do are 28 count cashel, and I've dyed them myself. The other mandala I've worked on this week is the Tahiti mandala. So again, still working in part one. These things are so big, try and get it so that you can actually see. That looks like the back. This is indeed the back. Good thing I'm not too worried about it. Try folding this up again though. Alright, oh, there we go. So, still working in part one on this one too. Part one will be all 4 of these corner bits, all 4 turtles, the sand and the shells that go around the circle. So, as far as what I did this week, that circle I believe is now all done, with the exception of it needs specialty stitching and beading, but all the base cross stitches are in. This little blackwork turtle needed a bit of flipper added to him, so he's now got both flippers. I love those turtles. Like, honestly, those turtles are the reason I bought this pattern. That turtle is so cool. But counting that turtle is not so cool. But he is so cool. And I filled in a lot of the yellow and green. I had to give up on trying to get that entirely filled in because there's a Gloriana in there that I'm missing. So I will need to place an order. So the other big part of this is, of course, the shells. And the last time I worked on this, I had a go at putting in the start of some of those little overworn shells. and I had been working up here, and I got a whole bunch stitched in, and I realized the pattern didn't line up. You had to mirror the pattern, not just rotate it, in order to get it to lay right in this section immediately on this side. And I thought, at that point I said, no, I'm just going to put it away. I'll come back to it after I've printed a mirrored copy of the pattern, and we'll come back to the shells. When I pulled this project out and realized that I thought I had done that printing and mirroring, and I haven't, I'm like, well, all right, all this stuff will be mirrored, we'll stitch on all these. Nope, doesn't work. These two were fine, they were just rotated. This one's mirrored again. So, can you even see that? There's some little over one stitches. So, yeah, basically for that one, I ended up take a screenshot of the pattern, flip it, and rotate it in a graphics software so that then at least when it displays on my computer screen, it's in the correct orientation. Of course, that totally horks up the way the symbols draw when you start rotating and whatnot, but it's all right. We'll get there. The other drama with those shells, for anybody who's working on a pattern like this, so Tahiti and Japanese moss garden, both of those patterns, the main pattern shows all 2/2 stitches. Martina gives you an additional pattern on the side for the 1/1 version of the, in this case, shells. In the Japanese moss garden, it was koi fish. When I did Japanese moss garden, I did all the 2/2, and then I went and filled in the 1/1, and things weren't fitting. So I thought, now this time, I'm going to do enough of the sand that I can easily place where those shells are going to go, so I can count off them. But I'm basically going to do the shells first, and then I'll fill in the 2/2, and that'll make my life easier. That was the theory. You have to be a bit careful on which of the 2/2s you're putting in order to guide your counting. There are cases where on the main pattern showing the 2/2 stitching, it will be one full cross of sand color. However, if you pay attention, you'll note the back stitching goes fair through the middle of that sand stitch. So the reality is that stitch should be 2 half stitches, or sorry, not 2 half stitches, 2/4 stitches of sand, and leave 2 1/1 stitches for shell. So I had to rip a little bit of my sand out because I'd gone too far into the shell, and I expect I might have to do that up here as well. We'll fudge those. I'll just be a bit more careful next time I put in my counting guidelines. So in the end, I managed to get 1, 2, 3 little starts of shells, just enough so that I can now be confident that I know where that shell starts, and go ahead and just put it in without worrying about counting or being in the right spot and all the rest of it. So in each little quadrant there is 5 shells. That means 5 times 8 is 40 shells. I have placed 3 out of 40 shells. This is going to be a process. Having said that, it'll be freaking awesome when it's done. You saw what those critters look like now that they're done. They were a process too. So as much as I might whinge, take it with a grain of salt, because these are so worth all the headache of getting them right. Yeah, so one more look at where that is all up to date. And my favorite bit, the turtle. He's so cool. As per the other, this is a 28 count cashel. dyed by myself. I think that is everything I've actually actively stitched on. My piles have gotten a bit out of order with having to refilm twice. Okay, since we're on a Chatelaine kick, let's have a look at the last Chatelaine. Do it the right way around this time. So this one is the Hawaiian Mandala. And for anybody who's relatively recent joining us, I'm doing this one because a lot of the Hawaiian themes are actually very applicable to the region of Australia where I live. The one exception is the volcanoes that go in those corners. So I am swapping out the volcanoes for one of our local hills, or at least attempting to. So that is the center. And at this point, I have zero idea. I think a lot of this is done, and it mostly maybe just needs specialty stitches and or beads. There are no specialty stitches in here yet, so I assume some of that will be specialty stitches. There's a little bit, there's pineapples, which are grown just a bit north of us. There's a lot of pineapples. And then this, I think I'm going to have to rip this out and have another go. I'm just not quite happy with the way this has turned out. So this is meant to be our local hill, and part of the problem is I did it facing the front so that you can see the little saint that is spray painted on the front of our hill. But then you really kind of lose the distinctive shape of the hill. A different angle would show you that shape, but then you can't see the saint. And I'm just not really happy with my charting. One of the things I thought is, obviously my daughter did such an awesome job with those shells and stuff. I'm thinking of having her basically do it in chart. Just basically draw for me the outline of the distinctive shape of the hill. So ditch the saint and then stitch it with a variegated thread, because the hill itself has lots of very distinct striations in it. So we might do that. But I think for the moment I might just go back next time I pull it out, work on other things and basically work around those and leave those till the very end. I had talked about switching, there's hibiscus flowers in here somewhere, and I talked about switching them to frangipani, just because I really like the frangipanis. But honestly, I think I'd rather focus my energy on getting the hill right, and so I'll just stick with the hibiscus. We do have hibiscus here. I just like frangipanis better, that's all. So yeah, that is my Hawaiian / North Queensland mandala. The only other full coverage piece that I have on the go at the moment is Aura of Autumn, and actually I believe, so it's a Leonid Afremov charted by Artecy, and I'm working on this panel here, and I think I'm about there. So I've got quite a ways to go yet. So that's where we're at. You can see we've nearly reached the top of the park bench. You know, another page will definitely finish off that park bench, and then it's basically background and a little bit of pole in there. So I think this is coming up on 2 years to get that far. This is going to be a long-term project. But yeah, I had originally kind of thought, well, maybe I'll do a page a month, and I just haven't been keeping up with that. But that's all right. Slow and steady. It's all good. I love the colors. it's really vibrant and awesome. And I will eventually do all 3 panels, but clearly not anytime soon. So this hasn't actually been out in quite some time, so I should probably keep it out and put it on the Q-snap and do a bit. I might actually have to buy another Q-snap, because now with the embroidery and the map and this, it just seems to be a bit of a battle for the one Q-snap. It's a bit better at the moment because I've still got that larger one that I'm borrowing, but I will have to give that back at some point. Right, so those are done. The only other one from my sort of active, no, I haven't done that one yet. Okay. The other one you would have seen recently is Enchantress of the Abyss by Bellafilipina Designs. This one I'm working on for my daughter. 2 kids, well, I started Amber stocking years ago, finished that this year. Oliver wanted a stocking, Maya didn't want a stocking, she wanted a mermaid. So, I'll show you all the fabric. It's one of those lovely gradient fabrics, but all she's got is acres of hair at the moment. This is a 28 count opal called Midnight Mermaid from Under the Sea Fabrics. And so this will be done the usual, swap out a lot of the Krynic for treasure braid. And I'm going to try and swap out the Mill Hills for delicas and other sorts of treasures. I had intended to keep the Mill Hill type treasures, but I just was finding them really hard to source, and so while I was on other places looking for delica equivalents, it was just easier to grab something that I thought looked similar to the Mill Hill ones at the same time. So that part, the bead conversion, is a bit of an experiment, but the stitching and whatnot should be fairly straightforward on that one. Just need to get time to do it. Okay, and now the last one that I consider one of my active whips, although it hasn't seen the light of day in a while, is Tropical Butterfly, again charted by Artecy. I don't have a picture of what this one will look like when it's all done, but it essentially, it's a big blue butterfly. I would think it looks like a Ulysses. So I've put Krynic blending filament in the blues and black blending filament in with the black to give the butterfly itself a bit of a shimmer and shine. The flowers and stuff won't have blending filament. I'm actually wondering whether this piece would benefit from more of a parking methodology. I don't know. I might have to pull it out and experiment. This is my only piece that's done with CXC rather than DMC. It's a 36 count fabric that I've dyed myself, a 36 count linen. So it's 1 strand of CXC over 2 threads of linen. Where there is blending filament, obviously it's the 1 strand of thread and the 1 strand of blending filament. So then it ends up being 2 over 2 for those bits. The blending filament is really the reason I hesitate to deal with parking. I just can't see blending filament hanging around in a parking thing scenario very much at all. So there is that. And that basically just leaves us what I could find of the very old and inherited whips. And wasn't very organized after I have put these things away. So this first one is actually not my whip. It's one of my mom's old whips. So I'm assuming this was probably a dimensions kit. It's very much her style of stitching. She and my aunt would have stitched acres of these sort of things. I have no idea what the name of it is. And I don't have the pattern to finish it. So if anybody, A, recognizes it, you know, to name it, and or B, even better, has a copy of the pattern that they'd be willing to sell me, let me know, because I'd love, it can't be very far off finishing. I think there's a bit in that corner and a bit at the bottom. And beyond that, it's got to be more or less ready and done to go. So I'd love to finish this, fully finish it, and give it back to her. I've got a couple of her other pieces that I've fully finished that need to go back to the States for her next time we go. Yeah. There's definitely, like, there's greens in the trees that clearly need to be filled in. It's possible the bottom is all done because that's mostly just like shadow. I don't know. But it's not far off. I'd love to find that pattern and just finish it for Mom. So one day we will do that. The other one I've inherited is Teresa Wentzler's Floral Bellpull. Now, I got this from one of my friends, and I can't remember whether she said she started it or she inherited it and just knew I'm like Teresa Wentzler's, so I would probably finish it. So I should find out exactly who did start it, but if it wasn't my friend, I don't know who they were. So, whoa, you can see how big, tall, can't even find the bottom of the fabric that thing will eventually be. Here's hoping they measured the fabric all right. But they've done the entire first block as far as I can tell. That's all backstitched. There's French knots in there. And they've done a lot of the greenery on the second block. For Teresa Wentzler, their back is really stinking neat, actually. I'm pretty impressed. So obviously the flower itself needs to be stitched in there, but the entire frame and the greenery for that second one is done. And then there's 4 more flowers on the Bellpull. So my drama with this piece is, whoever did start this, they do their stitches the opposite direction than I did. Than I do. So my question is, do I do my stitches my normal way, knowing full well they're opposite to what's there before, is sort of an indicator that, you know, the 2 people worked on it? And I even thought, if I can find out the name of the person that did, I'll put both initials in there as well at the end. Or do I endeavor to remember to always swap my stitches back to front so that they match what's already there? I'm kind of leaning towards the former and deliberately doing them differently. But, I mean, that'll be awesome once the whole thing gets done. And, I mean, for Teresa Wentzler, those are small blocks, but that's not a small amount of stitching. So it looks like those yellow ones that are missing there, those that look like roses. And I'm not good enough with my flowers to be able to, you know, say what the rest of them are. But all of those blocks are fairly densely stitched. And of course, the Teresa Wentzler frames are always relatively intricate. A lot of satin stitch in that one. So, yeah, I'm actually looking forward to working on that one, Okay, the last two are my actual starts out of the deep stash from the years before I had kids. Unfortunately, this one, Teresa Wentzler's Noah's Ark, I started this for my eldest when she was born. I had it in my head that this had a child's name and date of birth in there, but maybe I had just intended to do that instead of the alphabet. But this one, I know I have it. I saw it when we were traveling on the caravan. I worked on some of those over one stitches. It will be here somewhere, but I, for the life of me, cannot find it, and it's not with my other deep stash projects. So that's a bit of a bummer, and I will have to keep my eye out for that one. I actually had intended to pick this one up and have this one be the next one to come out of deep stash into the active rotation to try and get it to a point where it was done, except I wasn't going to put Amber's name and birth details in there. I was going to just leave that blank until such a time as there was another kid that I wanted to give it to. However, if there's an alphabet, maybe I'll just go ahead and stitch that alphabet in there and then gift it when an appropriate recipient comes along. But I have to find it first. So I guess I'm going to be still digging through boxes. I think I'm going to be digging through boxes for a long time. The last one, I think, that is hanging out there to be finished from all those years ago. Hold on, let me show you this. It's the Nativity by Serendipity Designs. So I have all of the patterns to do the entire thing. Acres and acres of acrylic in this thing. I only ever started this center panel, and at this point I won't stitch the other two. As it is, the center panel, when it gets finished, will just go in the I don't know what to do with it to finish it pile, because I have zero inclination to put it out on display or do much with it. So it will get finished purely so it's not an in-progress thing and put away. But you will see there's very little to go on it, so I should just suck it up and be done and move on. So this one, massive, it's almost as big as a mandala. So yeah, all the stitching in that is done. Oh, sorry, all the stitching of the people and stuff is done, all the figures and whatnot. The only thing that's left is these rays of sparkle and stuff. I think most of the rays are done. It's underneath, like her skirt, there's like glittery starfield sparkles. And I'm pretty sure that comes like all the way down through here. Oh, I don't want to do that, guys. So when I started this years ago, it was before I knew anything about the pin stitch. So I was carrying that blending filament along the back, which I'm not really thrilled with. You know, I wasn't even when I was doing it, but I didn't know what alternative there was. I'd never heard of the pin stitch. Even now that I know of the pin stitch, it'd be different. If I thought this was going to be a family heirloom and I was going to finish it and enjoy it and have it up on the display, I'd suck it up and I'd do it with the pin stitch and be done with it. But because my heart's really not in it, I think I'm just going to persist on carrying it because the reality is it's faster. But that starfield's got to go down both sides. So that's acres of acrylic and just sort of intermittent stitch here, stitch there. I don't think there's a great deal of rhyme or reason to where the stitches are, other than the general flow, so you don't have to be too detailed in your counting. You know, that's a benefit. I should just suck it up and be done with it. But I'm avoiding it because I'm sooking. And, you know, after having my camera or phone thing eat my first video, I am not in the mood to suck it up this album. But that should come out of Deep Stash and get finished. I had thought the Wentzler Noah's Ark was going to come out. But now maybe that really only leaves the Bellpull as something that's ready to go, because the other one I don't even have a pattern for. So maybe I should pull out the Bellpull. I don't know. Stay tuned. We shall see what happens. So I think that's all of my whips and stuff, including the really old stuff. That's the entirety. I hope you enjoyed. I will tack on that bit from the mostly non-stitching projects that I found, and I'll catch you in a couple of weeks. See ya! G'day, Flosstube. Just looking to distract myself from the job of cleaning out my she shed. I've been going through boxes and boxes of stuff, trying to find homes for things, etc. Still got a mountain of ways to go, guys. But I stumbled upon a box that had a bunch of projects from years ago and stuff, and I thought, none of this is cross-stitch related, but you might get a bit of a kick out of the other things that I've done over the years. And in no particular order, because, to be honest, I don't remember. I went through a phase for a lot of years where I was doing digital scrapbooking. So this was something that used to sit on my desk at the office when the kids were much younger. I couldn't even tell you who made the kit, so a lot of things like the frame and stuff, you know, that would have come as one piece that I could insert my kid's photo in. The tag would have been a separate piece, you know, and then you layer the items and make a layout. And basically I would have just printed that on photo paper and cut it down to fit this little frame. So there's, yeah, one for each of the kids and sort of coordinating design. I did the digital scrapbooking. Basically, I started that when the kids were really little because I had no place to keep all the paper scrapbooking stuff out of their hands. At that point, we were living in a 3-bedroom, but we used 1 bedroom as an office. And so it was really crowded with the kids. And so if I did anything, it was on the kitchen table or in the living room, and they were all through it. A few years later, we actually moved into a house that had a craft room for me where I could put things away and shut the door. So I went back to the paper scrapbooking, and this I made for my husband one year until the kids are a little bit older. My eldest was starting color guard that year. This is when we were back living in the States. And again, I think you may have seen some of those bobbly type things in some of my FFO type finishes, you know, so things like that photo frame are probably a die. Looks like we have some texture paste and stuff in the background of that piece of paper. Yeah, some stamping and stuff over there. Basically anything to make it all grungy and mucky. And that little bit shouldn't actually... Oh yeah, it is. They're the plastic tiles of some description. I don't know where they would have come from. But anyway, so that used to sit on my husband's desk. In those similar sort of era, I often would do a tag sort of thing to kind of explore techniques, I suppose. So this was basically all I was really doing was making that background with stamping and splatters and sort of in a monochrome type finish. And then I would have just put whatever looked appropriate on it to kind of finish it up. More systematically, I suppose, when I wanted to kind of document various things I'd done, I'd construct a little book like these. Obviously, I went to town decorating the front of it, making it all pretty, but had a little dragonfly fall off. I'll have to re-add. But basically, the gist of these books, and I have a couple of them, you know, is the tags aren't really finished. They're more, you know, I would have done an experiment on this piece of paper and that piece of paper and just whacked them down on something that had a colored background. But then there's the notes as to what created the picture on the front. So basically at any point when I was like, I don't know what I want to do with this project, I could flip through these and remember, oh yeah, that left a really cool finish. And therefore, you know, how do I go about doing it? And this particular book was literally from a class, one of those online classes I did, Creative Chemistry 101. So I have a book for Creative Chemistry 101 and a book for 102 as well. But when I get uninspired, I could flip through and see, oh yeah, I want to do something like that again. So they're a good reference thing. And I was actually thinking with the embroidery stitches stuff that I'm starting to do, it might actually be a good idea to do something similar, you know, where you have, so in the case of those beach letters, I'm doing, you know, the stem stitch. So do the stem stitch with 2 threads, do the stem stitch with 4 threads, do the stem stitch with shorter stitches, do them with the longer stitches, you know, and again, have all your examples and then just document it on the back. And in those cases, I just probably just literally glue the fabric onto whatever pages are in the book. So those are actually, when I'm actively doing anything, pretty great references. The other thing I stumbled upon was this old Hardanger card. This was actually given to us by my husband's grandmother. She was so stoked when I came on the scene because she had cross-stitched and done Hardanger, and you know, basically nobody else in my husband's family had. So she finally had somebody to share that with, and so you know, there were a lot of cards. And I have one of her bigger sampler pieces she gave me when we were married. And after she passed, a lot of her supplies and stuff, the aunts kept aside and gave to me. So, and the last thing I pulled out, just because it was pretty and cool, I think this was done relatively later, after we were back in Australia. But just a canvas. You know, it says, "Journey is best journey." No, there's no It just says, "Journey is best measured in friends rather than miles." I wonder if there used to be a I don't know. The chipboard was probably Dusty Attic, I would assume. Yep, so that's more chipboard up here. No doubt the flowers are Wild Orchid Crafts, some more of those various bits of bling. My guess is that bit would have come out of the wedding section at Michael's years ago. The background definitely has a sheen to it that you probably can't see. There's a gold shimmer in the paint. So my guess is that's a Lindy's Stamp Gang. But there's definitely lace and other random bits and pieces and stamping, and like, can you even see? Yeah, you can see a little bit of a splotch. That's actually raised texture paste in there, just to make kind of a different, interesting background. So anyway, I thought it was cool, and I expect actually my daughter's going to end up commandeering this one and sending it to one of her friends overseas. So it will be nice to see this one get a home where it's loved. And I suppose the rest of the treasures I found will probably wind up back in their box. Although I did debate taking that one with my kids to the office, even though they're quite a bit older now. My desk is pretty boring at the moment. Alrighty, I'll see you back in the main video. See ya.